Welcome back to Friendly Developing. I'm your host Frank, and last time we took a look at a poker game API and looked at the API design, how to make improvements to that. Today I want to talk about something different, about how you keep your code base healthy, something like vitamins for the body. As the saying goes, an apple a day keeps the doctor away. We can do a lot of simple hygiene, simple things like vitamins that we take into our code base to keep it clean and hopefully free of a lot of problems. So hold on, and I'm going to show you a whole bunch of little tips and tricks to keep your code base healthy and make your life easier. Okay, so let's start with taking a look at the code base. You can see that I set up my IDE in a pretty hard way. There's a lot of errors that aren't actually errors, so currently the whole project is building perfectly fine. But I like to use this setting availability we have. Compared to your human body, no one tells you immediately when you have some deficiency somewhere. That takes a lot more effort, but in programming we have this nice way, and we can just set up the IDE, show us a lot of problems immediately right away. And if you get into a habit of getting rid of them also immediately, then you will have a healthy code base very easily. So that's just step one, really. And if you want to know more about these cool IDE features, I did a separate video on my favorite IDE features. Want to take a look? Now let's just dive into what we see here. So there's some tests, and this one's pretty easy, like just some unused imports. Here we notice something in the naming scheme. Here's just a bunch of imports. And similarly here, the red one, do we have? Oh, there's an unused assignment. So a lot of small things like that, which you just don't need to. So let's start with cleaning up this code base. Okay, so just like in sports, we can do a little bit of a warm-up and just get rid of these red errors. And I'm going to show you a few simple tricks on how to do that fast. In the IDEs, you usually have a quick way to analyze these imports and just remove any of these usings you don't really need. So if you press a shortcut, then boom, it's just gone. So this is a super fast way if you have something on the imports. Here, for example, we have a naming violation because normally properties in the interface in particular should start with uppercase and C# specifically. Obviously, this depends on your language, but you want to have a consistent naming and not have only one property violated and all the others in place. So you can do something like an automatic rename here. You can also try renaming and you will get suggestions usually, like use the uppercase version here. Either one will work. And if you have a proper code base available where you don't have some dependencies that you don't have access to, then you can freely rename things like this. Here's another import, so press our short again, goes away. This one here is a redundant initialization, so it's a nullable variable, and assigning it to null doesn't make any difference because that is just the default anyways. So again, you can remove this redundant initializer. If you have this in a bigger number, here's an extra tip. You can open up these menus and do the same cleanup automatically for the whole file, folder, project, or even your entire solution. So this is a huge time saver if you have like a new setting or a new rule you want to enforce at a time where there have been already many violations. Then you can just clean it up in one go and don't have to do every single one on its own. So for now, let's just do this one. Oh, here's a good example. So there's another one. So now if we, for example, do this in the whole folder and we look to the other place, it's already gone. There's another import. It's unused though. Same here. Go down here, imports, then there's something more here. And this is another naming thing. So constants, in some languages, the convention is to have them all uppercase like this. Not so C#, they're just normal uppercase writings. And then finally we go to the program CS, another bunch of unused imports. And now you see that's it already. It's just a few keystrokes and we're done, and we have already got rid of all of these annoying warnings that we had there. Okay, so now let's take another look at warnings. And if you like this kind of hands-on demonstration, please subscribe to the channel so we can do more of that. Here we see that there's a lot of markers on the side. There's 4 warnings, and at least Rider has a few more issues that it finds, which are even checkmarked already and kind of green, so they're not this problematic at all. Well, let's look at the warnings first. So this one has like, okay, namespace doesn't correspond correctly to where it's located. This is a typical default policy to have your namespace match the folder structure replacing it. You can make exceptions to that and then maybe disable the warning. You can be really hard on that and say like, this is a requirement. And one trick is you can actually take a look at these inspections and then configure the severity based on what you want for your project. So if you care about the namespaces matching, then you would just place this into the error category and make sure that every time you have a mismatch, it shows up as a red error so you can quickly fix it right away. Don't get into trouble later down because sometime it deviated. You can also ignore these and say like, okay, they don't matter to me. I don't care about it in my code base. And then you just go all the way up to maybe even do not show level. If you want to actually fix them though, it's super easy. You press Alt and Enter because that has a lot of these warning things easily fixed. And we can say, okay, move it to the right namespace. So that's it, namespace fixed. The next one here says, oh, you have nullable enabled. So how can you check for null here if it's not allowed from the compiler side to assign something as null? So this cards in hand has a setter property and the value is being checked. So let's see, do we have some method here like a constructor? Yeah. So if I would try something like cards in hand equals some new array. So what does it need? Strings. So something like this. That's how the setter is being called. But if I now go and try to assign a null here, well, that will already say like, well, you can't really do that. You can't convert this to null reference type. And you notice another small problem with the nullability in C# specifically. This is just a warning. Just like this one is a warning. So you could still compile all of this and actually maybe think you might need this. You can also go into your project settings and then configure the warn as errors for the nullables. And in that case, if you recompile this, then you get an error here that says, no, this is not even compilable anymore now. And at this point, you're absolutely safe. So once we are in this position that we cannot do an assignment like this, so it's deleted, we have to basically no longer care about these checks. And we can get rid of this. So we can change this expression to true, which sounds super helpful. Maybe not. So actually we can just lose it. Right, so we don't need any of that anymore. And then the warning is gone as well. So just to my left in this file. And here you see that. So this is basically super interesting because there's an argument null exception. And it says that there's some string message that explains what you should have done, like the cards must have a rank and suits, the file must have at least 3 and no more than 5, so something's wrong about the number. But actually it's misusing the argument null exception, because if you look at the constructors that are available in the argument null exception, it's actually expecting a parameter name. You can give like a bigger message kind of thing. You can also combine it with the parameter name and the message, but the message variant is only available with an exception, and if you have only a string, it's supposed to be the parameter name. So that's why this warning isn't just about anything normal. It's just about misusing this argument null exception. And the argument you're given basically at this point is the cards in hand. So you can do something like the name of cards in hand and say this one isn't gone. And then if you use it correctly and select this argument here has a problem, and I'm going to explain to you the problem, the warning is gone. This one we introduced in the last video where we did the API design. So maybe you want to take another look at this video, but basically we didn't do the documentation. So all the methods here have this XML-based documentation available. We didn't add that yet, so sure. Maybe let's add it here. I can say like this converts exception internal model and return the internal player model. Okay, so this is something we can always add, of course. I'm not a huge fan of these, to be honest. Usually they take a lot of effort if you do them all over the place all the time, and they take up a lot of code, real estate basically. For which value? Like if you don't make use of these, you have your team working on the code base, having access to the actual code. That is much more powerful than a generated documentation from this where you cannot see the actual code. So if you don't have a valid use case, maybe just omit it. If you do have a valid use case and you make use of these documentations afterwards, because you have, for example, a library that third-party clients are using without getting access to the code, that's a perfectly valid reason. For now, let's assume this is the case and keep it consistent, because I don't want to change any of these policies on the project. Okay, and now we get rid of all these warnings. Maybe take a look at another one. So here we have two warnings, and oh, that's kind of an interesting one. So it's warning that the set here has an unused value, and it's actually always assigning 52, which is kind of funny because now I'm going to take a look, where is it used. Very nice. Right, here's a test that says like total cards equals 10, and of course we can run this and hope it just works. Yeah, perfectly fine. Now what we could do is, like, if we assigned this, we could be under the impression that after assigning it to 10, it should be 10, right? But that's actually not true. As we just seen in the code, it's going to ignore the value and just return the 52. So that's kind of annoying that you can actually do this. And so why do you have a setter at all if this is just going to be 52, and then you return it as 52? You don't initialize it to 52, so it starts at 0 until you set any value, at which point it becomes 52. So all of this is super strange, right? And actually this is more like a fixed value of 52, and you don't need any of that other thing. Now you lost a bunch of code, got rid of the warning, and of course introduced an error wherever it's assigned. Because this assignment doesn't work, we can also just remove it. After all, there is nothing to be assigned. There never was. And now we got another two warnings. So there's another error. Sorry, because we removed the setter. Yeah, this one doesn't make any sense now. So we can just get rid of that as well. Probably in a test, of course, our assignment of 10. And do we think this might break the test? Well, no, it shouldn't, because the assignment to 10 never worked in the first place. So this is just fine and works normally. But this is a good example on how to treat warnings. You don't just want to do ignores around these warnings, suppress them, or just do the most minimal thing. For warnings, it's much more interesting to think about them and what they mean in a few cases like this. You get a much better code, much healthier code base if you solve them at their root cause and don't just remove a symptom. Okay, so I'll just go ahead and clean up a bunch of these other warnings in the same way. So this is maybe an interesting case here. We have this warning here that there is a property parameter here that is not accessed at all and not read. But this is inside of the external model we built for the last video. So we want to clean separate internal and external model. And the external model is just stuff we send out through the API. So it's kind of clear and understandable that our local code doesn't use this external parameter and read from it, because we have our internal representation. So I could delete it, but that means it's not going to be sent out through the API anymore. So I want to keep this. I don't want the warning. So this is one of the things where you can actually disable the warning in a specific place with a comment or anything like that to say like this is okay. Usually when you do this, you add an extra comment to explain like why are you ignoring it like this and give a reason. Okay, so let's do a quick summary of what we've seen today. We've seen a lot of cases of unused things, imports, assignment, variables, and there's a lot of the times you can do Alt plus Enter, and this menu gives you an easy, fast way to just get rid of it and clean it up. Sometimes you have to manually delete it. We've seen the optimizing imports just by the shortcut. Learn that if you're going to use it every single day, then inconsistencies are becoming more and more annoying the more prevalent they become. So just clean them up immediately, like the namespaces we've seen, or the inconsistent naming schemes. And for nullability, you just enforce it to get rid of this problem altogether. And I have a separate video that you can take a look at to see more on how to do that properly. Then you also want to analyze the root cause of these warnings, like where are they coming from, not just fix a symptom, which also means that all of this small, tiny cleanup work isn't just feeling like annoying cleanup. It'll be part of a learning process because you get better and better at understanding why some super clever people decided to turn these things into warnings, because they are a problem. And finally, we've seen a really nice case where we had something that we do not want to fix. Like not all warnings really need fixing. And actually, we would have created a bug if we fixed the warning. So start applying these tricks every day, all the time, whenever you write a code. And your code base will thank you for it and become much, much healthier. So thank you very much for watching and have fun developing.